And the main purpose of the book is as it opens, is really, we need to understand organizations. We all live in organizations. We're born in organizations. We're buried by organizations. We're entertained. We're harassed by organizations with robocalls and from phone companies or whatever, and so on and so forth. We understand ourselves, and if we don't, we go to a bookstore and can pick 35 books on ourselves. We understand the economy, or at least we can find 10 articles in, or let's say 3 articles in every newspaper and blog. But in between, we don't understand organizations. We mix them all up. A very prominent professor at Harvard Business School referred to hospitals as focused factories. She was the healthcare person at the Harvard Business Review, and she referred to hospitals as focused factories. Is that where you want your baby delivered, in a focused factory? So we mix them up. We mix up bureaucracies with professional organizations, for example. But more interesting are sports, because I tried to match a sport, and it worked very well with 3 of them. We had trouble with the 4th, but works very well. American football, it's actually North American football because it was invented at McGill, my own university in Canada. But football is the ultimate program machine. Everything's lined up, rules galore. Who can catch the ball? Who lines up? And even the cheerleaders line up. The quarterback is in charge, or the coach is in charge, and maybe radios in the play to the quarterback. But everything is absolutely, utterly programmed. The professional organization is the one where everybody plays separately, but together. And a double play, baseball to me is that sport. A double play is a perfect example of the same thing as an operation in a hospital. The second baseman grabs the ball, flips it to the shortstop grabs the ball, flips it to the second baseman, who throws it to the first baseman. It's absolutely completely sort of worked out. Everybody works independently, but hugely skilled, very, very skilled kind of activity. And the project pioneer is hockey, basketball, rugby, and soccer, or European football, or Brazilian football. The interesting thing there, it's very tight teamwork. Look at rugby, where they form the scrum, or a very, very tight teamwork. But every time the puck or the ball is in one end and the offensive team is taking it out, it's like a new project. Nobody knows what's going to happen. When they call the play in football, the offensive team knows what's supposed to happen. But when they pick up the puck in hockey, nobody knows how it's going to unfold. The joy of it is you don't know what the hell is going to happen. And then we tried to figure out, so it's project sport. And then we tried to figure out what is a personal enterprise. And finally, we came up with a perfect example, which is World Cup yacht racing. Don't forget, we're talking team sports. We're not talking individual sports. So in World Cup yacht racing, the person who perhaps owns the boat, helps to design the boat, skippers the boat, and so on, it's all kind of, the other people are important, but one person is really, really in charge. So those are the 4 basic types. I've often been not an opponent of leadership, but just kind of had enough of it. Everything is leadership, and you got this really stupid idea that leadership is somehow superior to management. Leaders who don't manage don't know what's going on. Just like managers who don't lead are boring to everybody else. Leadership and management are part of the same thing. You can't separate them. You don't want leaders who don't manage. You've got to be in touch. You've got to know what's going on. But you can't take 3 steps without hearing the word leadership, and it's just too much. Say the word leader or leadership, and the focus is on one person. Okay, we may not realize it, but when we say leader, we mean an individual. We could talk about group leadership, but we don't. We don't think of it that way. We think of it as individual leadership. Even if we say that Albert Einstein was a leader in physics, he's not a manager, he wasn't a manager, but still focusing on the individual. And if you're going to understand organizations, the first thing you're going to understand is it's collective. Organizations is groups of people trying to get something done, coordinating with each other to accomplish something. And so communityship is more important in general than leadership, or at least leadership has to serve communityship. Part of the job of leader managers is to serve the people who are going to work together and collaborate and coordinate to get something done. Now, the role of leadership management varies in each of the forms. So in the personal enterprise, it's obviously more important because we're talking about entrepreneurial organizations, or we're talking about turning around sick organizations where one person has to be more fully in charge, like the skipper, like the person who owns the boat in a World Cup race. Obviously, there's a lot of leadership there, but there's still communityship there. The crew has to be engaged and encouraged and working together. If you go to a project pioneer organization, leadership is less relatively important than working together. It's how the teams function together and how they function with each other. Some organizations are one big project, like a moonshot or something. Of course, it's one big project, but it's made up of many, many, many projects. But other organizations, like consulting firm that does different sort of contracts, ad hoc contracts, is very much a project organization where each project is separate from the others, but they still have to find ways to work together in some respects. So I put communityship ahead of leadership, at least in the other forms, not so much in the personal form. In a hospital, it's not about leadership. It's about how they function together. As I said before, a lot of that is kind of automatic, but that kind of coordination is absolutely key. And the great hospitals have a sense of pride and belonging, strong cultures. That's communityship. Yeah, when a government intervenes to save a great big organization because it's too important for employment, that's awful. That's awful. The organization is dead. Let it die from a stroke or a heart attack instead of a cancer that just drags it out and drags it out. How many organizations, look at, I don't know, like Sears or whatever, I don't know, organizations that just, or J.C. Penney, I don't know, I don't want to name something that's not dead yet, but organizations that take years and years and years to die. Why don't they just have a quick stroke and we get rid of them? And we can recycle their resources and recycle the human beings, not human resources, I don't like that term, but human beings, and 10,000 new startups is a hell of a lot better than one old, sick, gigantic organization. And so we've got to keep recycling in a way, and the cycle starts with entrepreneurship, whether it's business entrepreneurship or what's called social entrepreneurship, not-for-profit businesses, but same idea, and there's more and more of those. That starts with a personal organization. And then maybe it becomes, if it's in mass production or mass service, maybe it becomes machine, or if it's professional, it'll become professional, or if it's project, it'll, Apple was created by Steve Jobs, and his role as an entrepreneur was huge. But of course, Apple was a project organization. So it early on, it was, as long as Jobs was there, it was a hybrid of a very effective personal organization with a very strong project organization. And after Jobs goes, it becomes maybe only a project organization. But you don't see that entrepreneurship and those ideas coming out of Apple now. That Jobs was an impossible act to follow. So So, so you become one of the other forms. Maybe you try and turn around, and there's a section about how you turn around these different organizations, how you correct them when they get sick. But eventually, they've had their day. And then, if natural forces can't get rid of them, then it takes politics to get rid of them. They get challenged politically, either because the whole place collapses into a political arena that drags itself down, or else people in the organization, act politically to change the place dramatically. Yeah, I call them the conundrums. That management is essentially dealing with conundrums. A conundrum is a problem you can't fix. It's going to be there. You can alleviate it, but you can't fix it. So the conundrum of planning. How can you plan ahead when the job of managing is so chaotic? That's out of my earlier book, but it's mentioned in this book as well. My book, Simply Managing, for everybody who wants to run out and buy it, God knows where it's gone. But anyway, there's another book called Simply Managing. That's funny. Don't know where it went. A book called Simply Managing has a whole chapter on the conundrums. How do you plan when everything is so chaotic in managerial work? And I don't mean strategic plan. I just mean plan ahead, think ahead. How do you bring things together? How do you bring things together when they're naturally apart? You have silos in organizations, and I also talk about slabs. Silos are like different functions, separate: marketing, finance, accounting, production, sales, and then you've got slabs. The C-suite, the managers, the different levels, and the slabs are as bad as the silos. The slabs block up, down, and the silos block lateral. But another conundrum is how do you manage? How do you coordinate things when they're so separated from each other? So they're arrogance. How do you have to be confident to be a manager. If you're not confident, if you're constantly running around saying, well, I don't know, and maybe it's this, and maybe it's that, I'm not sure what's happening, and so on, drive people crazy. But if you're arrogant, I know best, and nobody's going to tell me what to do, you're over the edge. So how do you maintain confidence without slipping into arrogance? So these are all the conundrums that you have to manage, and I associate different conundrums with different forms. So the arrogance one would apply most obviously to the personal enterprise. Musk was presumably very confident in running Tesla. He's become totally arrogant in running Twitter. So different ones have different needs to different ways of managing. And I'm working on an article now to try and describe the nature of managerial work and the nature of strategy formulation or formation in the different forms. So, for example, in a personal form, strategy is about visioning. It's about creating a vision for the whole enterprise, which Steve Jobs was the master at. He had such a clear, sharp vision of what he was doing. It was amazing. And in the machine form, it's planning, but it's not strategic planning. It's more detailed planning. And in because the strategy is built in. And in the professional organization, it's about venturing. Everybody going off, trying, each surgeon, each physician in a hospital, each professor in the university, either alone or in small group, developing their own little strategies that add up to the strategy of the organization. And in the project organization, it's learning. You're constantly trying new things, and the organization learns from the projects that work best. So all that kind of gets worked together in the new book.